Hey guys, Tyler here with Torwick's Guiding Service. Got another tip video for you about a technique that I've been using that I really like to throw this time of year. Right now it's about mid to late March. This time of year here on Lake Travis, the bass are spawning. So you're going to be finding, a mix of, pre-spawn bass, spawning bass, and post-spawn bass. And when you're out here fishing, you're going to notice that there's going to be a lot of, I call them cruisers, just those bass that are cruising the bank. They're not really glued in on a bed, and they're kind of a pain in the ass to catch. They just cruise by whenever you pitch a bait at them. So this is a technique that's good for targeting those fish and can produce some really good bites for you this time of year. And it's a technique that I don't see a lot of people throwing. I think it gets overlooked, but it's only something I throw for maybe a month out of the year, and that's the floating worm technique. So let me show you guys first off how I rig this. So I like to throw this on a 7-foot medium action spinning rod. So this is a Dobbins 703 Sierra series with the micro guides. So it's really lightweight. It casts really far, but it's also got enough backbone that when you get that bite, you can set the hook. Because that is a problem I tend to have when you make a really long cast with spinning gear, is really getting a good hook set. This kind of helps solve that problem. For the line, I like 10-pound Power Bro. I like that really lightweight line. It's super strong. I don't think you're ever going to break this stuff, but it lets you cast it really far. So go with the braid, and then from there, this is really important, is a barrel swivel, okay? I like the barrel swivel because it gives you just a tiny bit of weight, and it helps kind of get that line down in the water just a little bit. From there, I like about, a 3-foot or so leader of monofilament, because again, you're trying to keep this bait high up in the water column. And they call it a floating worm, but in reality, it does get below the surface, but it stays high up in the water column. Next little tip is I like an EWG hook like this. Excuse me, just an offset shank worm hook. Now, a little tip is I do not like to go with a light wire hook, because the hook itself acts as a little bit of weight to help you cast this and help get that bait a little bit deeper in the water. But again, everything's staying up high in the water column. So it's not a Mojo rig, it's not a Carolina rig, it's a floating worm rig. And then for your bait, you want to use a straight tail worm, and typically you pick one that does not have salt in it, okay? So that's why they call it the floating worm rig. Methylate, pink, white, chartreuse, any of those wild colors, it really excel for this. So in this case, I've got a pink trick worm. Now, just rig it, normally like you would weedless. A little tip, if I'm fishing around heavy brush and stuff like that, I'll bury the tip of the hook into the worm, just like this. Now, there's kind of two ways of rigging this. One, you can rig it to where it's nice and straight. Okay, another way that I find works really well is if when you're rigging it, pull a little bit extra and you kind of rig it so that there's a kink in the worm. And the reason you do that is when you twitch it through the water, it kind of twirls and it moves a little bit differently, and it kind of changes the action. So just experiment with that. And then when I'm throwing this around banks that don't have a lot of brush, there's not a ton of structure, that hook point, I'll leave that exposed, okay? I don't rig it back inside the back of the hook, or the worm, I mean. So I leave that exposed like that so that I get a much better hookup ratio, because you'll get fish that'll come up and slap at this thing, and if you leave that hook point out, you tend to hook them a little bit better. So when you're done with it, it should look just like this, okay? Now the way you work this, it's very similar to a jerkbait. Let me show you. So when you're fishing this, be mindful of any isolated structure, be mindful of docks, corners of docks, any brush in the water. And right now the water is really clear on this lake. And it's kind of cool because you can actually see the fish come up and hit this, because you'll see your bright colored worm disappear. So I'm gonna make a long cast out there. Here I'm casting kind of towards the dock. I'm gonna keep my rod tip low, and just like a jerk bait, I'm gonna go 1, pause for a second, reel up a little slack, 1, 2. And I'm just slowly letting this worm do its thing. Every time you jerk it, it kind of jerks to the side, it twirls a little bit. It's got a very erratic action. Now right here where I'm fishing, I can see the worm out there. And the cool thing with this is when you throw those really bright colors, especially in clear water like this, fish will come up from the bottom. You'll see them come from a long ways to attack this worm. You also get a lot of followers. So a little tip is when you work this bait, work it all the way back to the boat. People have a tendency a lot of times to reel it in when it's 10, 20 feet away. and make a new cast in there to get up close to the shoreline, don't do that. Keep watching the bait, work it all the way back, and you're watching, see if you get any followers. And when that happens, start giving little twitches, just kind of, change up the pace of it to try and get those bites. But it's just like a jerk bait. Just, be mindful of those slow twitches. And with this technique, again, they call it a floating worm, but it is sinking a little bit from that barrel swivel and from that hook. So it'll start to get down there, and this thing will get down, 3-4 feet deep. So the ideal depth to work this in is anywhere from, a foot of water to maybe 15 feet out, especially on lakes like Travis where it's really clear. But this technique can be really effective this time of year. So on whatever lake you're on, whenever the topwater bite starts to pick up and, it's just getting good, that's when you should be throwing this. And I'll keep throwing this for probably another month or so. And after that, I switch over to flukes. Once the shad spawn gets going on, this pattern dies off a little bit. But for now, well, you've got those fish that are just cruising the bank that are up shallow that have either already spawned or getting close to spawning. This is a really good technique to try for them, okay? Good luck.